Our next several lessons are going to be over fraction review. So we're going to start off with just adding and subtracting fractions. Before we get too far, some things we need to remember. In order to add or subtract, you must have like denominators. That's the only way we can add or subtract fractions, is that we have to have, oops, I forgot to put in the word like, must have those like denominators. So, example 1, we're going to find the sum. We want to give our answer in the simplest form, so we'll talk about that as we go about. First thing we're going to look at is to make sure that these denominators are the same. So remember, numerator is on the top, denominator is on the bottom. So I'm going to look at the denominators. They're both 12, so that I know that my answer is going to be over 12, because my denominator is going to stay the same. And I'm going to take that 5 twelfths plus the 9 twelfths. So 5 plus 9 is 14. And when it comes to your homework, Math Excel will tell you how it wants, whether it wants you to leave it improper, whether it wants you to make it mixed. I personally, when you do your exit ticket, I'm perfectly fine with you leaving answers as improper. We just need to make sure it's in simplest form. So simplest form means that we reduce. If there's a number that divides into both, we divide it out. So when I'm looking at 14 and 12, both are divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide both top and bottom by 2, because what you do to one, you have to do the other. So the numerator, 14 divided by 2, gives us 7. Our denominator, 12 divided by 2, gives us 6. And so like I said, on your exit ticket, I would accept 7/6. If Math Excel asks for a mixed number, that's when we say, okay, well, how many times does 6 divide into 7? The answer to that is 1. Ooh, that's a scary looking 1. And then when I take those 6 away, how many are left? And so when I take away the 6, I'm left with 1/6. And so both of these, either 7/6 or 1 1/6, are both acceptable answers. Again, in Math Excel, you just got to make sure, because it will tell you how to answer, whether it wanted a mixed number or whether it wants an improper fraction. So that's adding. Subtracting is basically the same. I've got to make sure that I have those like denominators. So here I have 8 and 8. So then I again know that my answer is going to have a denominator of 8. And then I do 3 minus 5, which gives us a negative 2. And it doesn't matter whether you put the negative on top or whether you put it in front or whether it's at the bottom, just as long as you have one negative. Our next thing is to double check to see if it can be simplified, because I can tell you that Math Excel will insist that you give simplified fractions. And so do not drop your negative. We're going to keep that negative. And then what goes into both 2 and 8? Again, on this one it is 2. So I'm going to divide numerator and denominator by 2. 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. And 8 divided by 2 gives us 4. And so our final answer for this one is a negative 1/4. So that's if we have like denominators. Well, what happens if we have unlike denominators? And so when we're working with that, we need to find the LCD, which stands for least common denominator. I'm just going to write denom. So least common denominator. You may also know this as your LCM, least common multiple. So we're finding what number 7 and 3 both multiply 2. And so on this one, the smallest number they multiply to is 21. So for 7 and 3 are LCD. CD. Oh, my L went away. is going to be 21. Because 3 doesn't multiply to 14, which would be our number below 7. And so then from there, I need to figure out, well, what do I multiply 3 by to get to 21? So I multiply 3 by 7. And if I multiply my denominator by 7, then I have to multiply my numerator by 7. So then that gives my 1/3 becomes a 7/21 plus, and then I do the same thing with my 4/7. What do I multiply 7 by to get to 21? The answer is 3. So then if I multiply the denominator by 3, I have to multiply the numerator by 3. And so then we end up with 12/21. So now that we have the like denominators, now we just add. So 7 plus 12 would give us 19 over 21. 19 is a prime number, so there's nothing that goes into both 19 and 21. So our final answer is 19/21. Sometimes your LCD can be that only one fraction has to multiply. So while we're here looking at example 4, we're working with finding the LCD of 3 and 9. And I know that 3 will multiply to 9, so our LCD is going to be 9. So then when I'm looking at this 2/3, I know that to get my least common denominator of 9, I have to multiply the 3 by 3. So if I multiply the denominator by 3, I have to multiply the numerator by 3. So 3 times 3 gives us 9. And then 3 times 2 is 6. Now when I look at my next fraction, which is 4/9, it's already a 9th, or denominator is already 9, so we're just going to write it as is, 4/9. Now that we have like denominators, we can subtract. So 6 minus 4 will give us 2, and our denominator stays the same, so 2/9. I double check to make sure it's in simplest form. 9 is an odd number, so 2 does not divide into it, so our final answer is 2/9. And that is how we add and subtract fractions.